because we know that we need someone to pay attention to the important things, we invest in tutors, because then the tutors paying attention to calculus and things like that. They're in their last year of high school. So, and they know that somebody better pay attention to that. So they're like, hey, we need really good grades this year. We need tutors in calculus and chemistry. Like they'll tell us, because they understand that somebody has to hold the attention to things.
Yeah. So you talk about leaders developing emotional competencies. So why do you think it's so important?
Well, I the longer I work with leadership, and I started this journey about it. I mean, I started leadership 20 years ago and started coaching people 23 years ago. And but the older I get, the more I watch leaders succeed or not succeed or be challenged, the more I feel like they get out of emotional competency. So I feel like understanding people's emotions, the ability to have a theory of mind, to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, to understand. I used to think, people went to work and it was just, that's what people did and it was okay. But just if I think about the normal workday for a leader, I think they have imposter syndrome often. They have, when you go through a hiring process for a new person, there's so much emotion on both sides of the table. It's essentially like dating. Like you're extending an offer, you're being offered something, you're having to negotiate. There's a yes, there's a no, there's a maybe, there's a do you like us, do I like them, and all of that takes emotional risk. And so awareness of that emotional risk as a leader brings so much to the workplace. Just to offer kindness in those processes is so important. Never mind performance evals and bringing emotional competency to that. I think it's just so clear to me now that at every step in the process, people have so much emotion that they bring to work. COVID has amplified that tenfold, if not more. People are on stress leaves or want to be on stress leaves or trying to figure out what to do with children. I've watched people who have had children during the pandemic and trying to figure out daycare and daycares that send children home when they have a sniffle. I cannot imagine. My children are twins. I cannot imagine having us, try to go to work with children who would be sent home randomly on any given day and trying to make it in the workforce. So having compassion with the realities of the workforce, I think, is just so incredibly important right now.
Mm-hmm. So how do you think what is needed from a leader has changed? We talked about the way to understand people and the way to negotiate and to be empathic. So what has changed in the workplace that demands different skills from these leaders?
I think that's a really good question. I mean, some of it's just COVID, like it's just amplified the stakes. I think it's, I think people have been pushed to the limits of their stress tolerance. They are not the same. In my experience, people are not the same as they were 3 years ago, 4 years ago. People were pushed hard at that point, and in some place in their lives, most people have been pushed to a breaking point in some way. And it's not always clear what it is. I see it with my clients. It may just be an increased irritation level. So at the same time that I'm saying we need more emotional competency, I know our leaders also have more frustration. They're less patient. They're more cranky. They've probably put in more hours. They've solved the same problem in different iterations 5 times, and they don't want to solve it one more time. So I think there's been this sort of spinning situation where it's like Groundhog Day, where we've solved COVID and then we solved COVID again, and then we solved COVID again. And so people don't want to solve that problem again. So that's changed. Like, it's almost better to get COVID, like let everybody go get COVID than try to solve the how are we going to distance and how are we going to wear masks and how are we going to send half the people home and how are we, nobody wants to do it anymore. Is sort of my experience. It's the cure is worse than the in people's minds. So that's the difference. I think the Me Too movement in some workplaces has really upped the stakes for people on how they feel safe or not safe at work. And I think that things are in flux there still and will continue to be in flux about how people grapple with different issues of equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Yeah.